Why is it that in our time, people can turn against each other so quickly, simply for supporting different public figures or holding different social positions, as if the person in front of them is no longer a human being, but a label that must be rejected, attacked, or erased? Why does reason so often step aside the moment identity is activated, while anger suddenly feels justified, righteous, even necessary? And why is it that you know you want to change, to sleep earlier, exercise, learn, start over? Yet, no matter how many times you decide to begin, old habits keep pulling you back. Why does knowing what to do so rarely turn into becoming the person who actually does it? And then there are those quiet nights when everything finally slows down and a strange emptiness appears. You can name your job, your roles, your titles, yet struggle to answer a simpler question: who am I? And if all these labels were stripped away, what would still remain? If these questions feel familiar, if you've ever felt torn, exhausted, or lost inside the identities you carry, then this episode is for you. Today, we'll examine a concept that quietly shapes our choices, emotions, and life paths more than almost anything else: identity. Many people assume identity is a theoretical concept, something discussed in psychology books, but distant from real life. In reality, it is deeply practical and profoundly influential. Identity shapes why you wake up in the morning, how you respond to temptation, which side you instinctively take in a conflict, and even what you consider acceptable or unacceptable. If you see yourself as a hard-working person, rest may trigger guilt. If you identify as a good person, refusing others can feel almost unbearable. If you define yourself as a failure, you may withdraw before opportunities even begin. Identity is not your job title or social role. It is an internal system of self-definition, how you understand who you are and what someone like you is allowed or not allowed to do. This system quietly sets the boundaries of your behavior. What looks like a lack of willpower is often a conflict with identity. When an action contradicts who you believe you are, it feels wrong, even painful. But when it aligns with identity, you can persist, even through difficulty. So the real question is rarely, should I do this? It is almost always, does this fit with who I believe I am? No one is born knowing who they are. Identity is something we learn, slowly and unconsciously. As we grow, we receive constant feedback from the world. Which behaviours earn approval, which emotions are ignored, which expressions are rejected. To gain love, belonging, and safety, we adapt. Some traits are reinforced, others are suppressed, and over time, patterns solidify. Psychology calls this process socialization. Identity is its deep psychological imprint. Habits play a crucial role. Every repeated behavior becomes evidence for a particular identity. When you consistently do something, you are not just acting, you are telling yourself, "This is who I am." Over time, belief replaces doubt and behavior begins to follow identity automatically. This is why identity is difficult to change. You are not just challenging an idea, but an entire system built from memory, habit, and self-narrative. Beyond personal experience, group belonging forms another foundation of identity. Humans are wired to form alliances. Historically, groups meant survival, safety, and resources. So, we define ourselves through belonging. Once a group identity is activated, your goals, emotions, and judgments shift. You begin to care about what the group values, defend what it protects, and instinctively distrust those outside it. What's striking is how fast this happens. A change in context can instantly trigger a new identity. Former competitors may become allies the moment a shared threat appears. That is the power of identity. It can reshape loyalties and emotions almost instantly. But this is also where danger emerges. When group identity becomes rigid, the line between us and them hardens. Others stop being complex individuals and become positions, camps, or labels. Once people are reduced to labels, understanding gives way to opposition, and loyalty replaces reason. Identity becomes harmful not because it exists, but because it can become fixed. When one identity becomes the only acceptable version of yourself, your range of choices collapses. On a personal level, this creates deep inner conflict. Change begins to feel threatening, not because you don't see better paths, but because change feels like betraying who you think you are. Someone who identifies as non-confrontational may feel intense anger when treated unfairly, yet suppress it out of fear of becoming someone unfamiliar. The result is long-term resentment and diminished self-respect. On a group level, fixed identity fuels conflict. As who we are is emphasized, who they are becomes oversimplified. Psychological research shows that extreme actions often arise not from personal cruelty, but from behavior justified in the name of identity. When people believe they are acting for an identity, acts once unthinkable can feel morally necessary. A rigid identity stops supporting life and starts consuming it. Identity is not formed only by external labels. One of its most powerful sources is internal, the stories you tell yourself. How you interpret past experiences, explain failure, and describe your relationship with the world slowly solidifies into belief. Some people live inside what psychologists call a contaminated narrative, a story where the world is always unfair, opportunities never arrive, and power always lies elsewhere. Over time, struggle becomes identity. Even when life improves, satisfaction remains elusive, because change would require abandoning the familiar story. Others reshape their experiences into redemptive narratives. They don't deny pain, but ask different questions. What did this teach me? How did it change me? Did it move me closer to who I want to become? The events remain the same, but identity loosens. Identity is not defined by what happened, but by how you continue to interpret it. Maturity does not mean having no identity. It means knowing you are using one. Real change rarely begins with dramatic declarations. It begins with small, consistent actions. Each action aligned with a desired identity creates new evidence, slowly weakening old definitions. Equally important is resisting the trap of a single identity. When all self-worth rests on one role, any challenge to it feels devastating. Psychological resilience grows through multiplicity. You can be responsible and still exhausted, ambitious and still uncertain, growing and still unfinished. Identity is a tool, a path, a temporary answer, not the essence of who you are. When identity begins to serve you rather than demand constant proof, you regain authorship of your life. Identity matters because it shapes how you understand yourself and how you move through the world. But it was never meant to be your only compass. Freedom is not erasing all labels. It is remembering that you are not identical to any of them. When rigid definitions loosen, many things you thought were impossible reveal themselves as merely unauthorized by your old identity, not forbidden by reality, but by who you believed you were allowed to be. When your focus shifts from who must I become to who am I becoming, life stops being a performance and becomes a process of growth. You are not a finished definition. You are a human being in motion. This is Happy Psychology. May you understand yourself a little deeper and love yourself a little more. We'll see you next time.